All right, welcome to another Friday webinar. It's me, it's him, Osyrus Bolly. I'm back with the Arkansas Public Policy Panel for another Friday webinar doing this 94th General Assembly legislative session in Arkansas with another powerful talk and discussion, and I got my good friends with me. This webinar is entitled Why Black History Matters. And if you've been following the work of the Arkansas Public Policy Panel Citizens First Congress, you know for the past year, through webinars, Zoom conversations, through the podcast, we have been talking about the importance of Black history and why Black history is important, not only in February, but 365 days of the year. We have to talk about Black history outside of February. We have to make that a part of our daily education. So we're just gonna get things started. Hey, we're just gonna get things started. If y'all on social media, please share this conversation with everybody. You know what I'm saying? Hit that share button. Let them know Black history, why Black History Matters conversation is going on right now. So share it on Facebook. We do have it live on YouTube if you follow the panel on YouTube. So share that conversation for all my folks that's not on Facebook. We got a YouTube link out there. Let's go share that for us. We're gonna get right into the discussion. So got some great guests with us today. And I want them to introduce themselves, but we're gonna switch it up a little bit. Give us a little spiel on yourself, but I wanna hear from y'all about, give me a Black history book that you recommend to the public. So we can start sharing these resources and sharing this knowledge that we got. I'm gonna start first. Like I said, my name is Osyrus Bolly. I'm the Racial Equity Coordinator and the moderator for this discussion about why Black history matters. The book that I recommend that I'm telling everybody to go check out, it's a good book. It's one of my favorite books. The Autobiography of a Family Photo by Jacqueline Woodson. She's one of my favorite authors. Autobiography of a Family Photo. This is a great book, and it's so relevant to this time that we're in right now. We talk about unique families and the way families are made up and how everybody is different and has their own personality, and respect for people's lifestyles and respect for people's individuality and the freedom, being able to have that freedom to grow. This is a good book of a coming of age story of a young girl learning about herself and also dealing with the different dynamics in her family and growing up in the hood and just the beauty of, you know, a loving family just trying to make it despite all the obstacles in their way and also learning themselves too. So Autobiography of a Family Photo by Jacqueline Woodson, go check it out. I'm gonna toss it to my good friend, my poetry teammate, you know what I'm saying, somebody I look up to. I'm gonna toss it over to, you know, Teacher of the Year from 2019, Miss Stacey McAdoo. Introduce yourself and please drop that book knowledge for us.
Hello, I am Stacey McAdoo. As Osyrus said, the forever 2019 Arkansas Teacher of the Year. I am a 21-year classroom practitioner. I currently am the executive director for Teach Plus Arkansas, where I run a policy fellowship that teaches teachers how to advocate for policy and practice issues that they are concerned about. And I was trying to think of what book to recommend. So I kind of have two things that I want to recommend. The book, to answer your question, that immediately came to my mind was this book, and it's not even, this book is entitled The People Who Could Fly. And the story behind why that book is on my mind is because I can remember way back in the day, one of my, and you probably know him, Osyrus, Dion Burns was one of my poetry members. We were in a poetry troupe back in the day when he was in college, and he did a performance of the book with us. And that was my first introduction to it. But what it did for me was it just really touched my heart. So you also have to keep in mind, this is, fresh out of high school, Stacey. So this is that age, right? And the book is about these people who were trafficked, brought over here to America unwillingly. And some of them forgot that they could fly. Some of them had to shed who they were to become this new person in America. And so this, and I won't go all into other details because I know that Kwami has to also talk. But the point of it is that our history didn't begin with slavery. We are magical people. And sometimes we just have to remember who we are and call on those who remember who we were to help us remember who we are. So that's the book that I recommend for everyone to read with their children, because it's really like a children's book. It's a folktale. But my immediate go-to thing for anytime I do presentations or anything specifically for Black History Month is anything by Nikki Giovanni, right? So like absolutely anything. She was the first person to really help me get into understanding my history, because all of her poems, she is like a historian observer, right? So she writes in first person about what she's seeing. So she would do all of these name dropping type of things in her poems that would make me go back and research whatever it was that she was talking about. So of course, I'm discovering her years after she's writing about those current events at that time. So the one poem that you have to read from her as it relates to Black History Month is a poem called "But Since You Finally Asked." And it's talking about when we arrived here in 1619, no one said welcome, and we're so glad you're here. And she goes through the rest of it. And she ends by saying, what she loves about our people is that we are resilient. We didn't write a constitution, we live one. So I was like, yes, you go, girl. So anyway, those are the two. I'm gonna stop because I feel like I've dominated much more time than I was supposed to in my brief introduction. So Kwami, I'm passing it to you. You're this way on my screen. I don't know where you are on everybody else's.
Thank you, and I appreciate those books. My son has The People Who Could Fly, so I appreciate that. And the autobiography of a family photo, I have that written down, and I will be purchasing it, going over to Garbo and get that ordered up. For me, I am Kwami Abdul-Bey. I'm a public historian for the purposes of this setting. And I also work as the elections coordinator / organizer for the Arkansas Public Policy Panel. And the books, I have a couple of books too, Stacey, but these two books right here, I just received them yesterday. And I got them, I listened to Sirius XM, Urban View on Sirius XM. And one of my most favorite shows on there is the Dr. Marie Daniel Favors show, because she is absolutely, positively, unapologetically Black. And these are two books that she recommends. I'll just hold them up right here. They are part of a American history series called Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales. This one is Blades of Freedom, and this is about the independence of the nation of Haiti. And this one is Underground Abductor, and it's about Harriet Tubman. And these are both graphic novels. So, and the reason that I got them is because I have two young children, 7 and 13, and I bought them every year. I buy Black history books for them to read, particularly during February, but I buy them all the time. But the reason I want to recommend these books, because Lauren, my 7-year-old, I handed him this book, the one on the Haitian independence, when I picked him up from school yesterday, and he could not put it down. And last night, about an hour after he was supposed to be in bed asleep, I'm walking down the hallway and I see some light, and he's literally under the cover with a flashlight reading this book. And I went in and I asked him, I'm like, what are you doing? He said, I could not go to bed until I finished it. And I'm like, well, go ahead. Let me leave you alone. And I walked out the room. And if it invigorated him and made him so excited, I just want to share with everybody else. So these are the two books that I'm referring for today.
Oh, they thought they was gonna get a regular talk. You got to have your pen and pencil out. You know, they dropping books. And my man, the Jazzy Leo, is up with the flashlight read. I ain't mad.
Yeah.
I ain't mad at him. You can't put that book down sometimes. So, you know what I'm saying? We need more like it. We need more like it. That's dope. And the reason why I asked both of y'all to be here is because I know that, you know what I'm saying, y'all have a wealth of knowledge, one, and but two, y'all very passionate about the work that you're doing, and y'all always incorporate Black history and everything that you have going on in your work. You know what I'm saying? And so my first question to both of y'all is just simply, why are you all so passionate about Black history? And why is Black history important?
I have a story, a personal story. And then, first of all, before we even get into Black history, you see the word story is in history. And I like to look at history as the stories of individuals and stories of people. When we take history and we make it all about events and dates, then we get out of the importance of the history and out of the lessons that we can learn and the connections that we can make. Sadly, I was not exposed to Black history growing up. And I really don't know exactly why. I know there's an element of trauma in there, you know, particularly with my family's connection to the 1957 crisis at Little Rock Central High School. And so I graduated from Central High School in 1989. And the only Black history that I was familiar with was, you know, of course, the story of Martin Luther King, sanitized story of Martin Luther King, and, you know, the sanitized story of what happened at Little Rock Central High School. And when I went out to the United States Air Force Academy, my first year there, my roommate was a brother, Taurus James. He was from Washington, D.C. And the first thing that he and all of the other brothers and sisters from all the big cities, they used to call me Cadet Uncle Tom. And they would call me Cadet Uncle Tom because I did not know my history. And I did not have the groove that they have. And I was willing to regularly capitulate to whatever the white students or anybody white would tell me. And so they just started calling me Cadet Uncle Tom. And I didn't even know, I'd never heard the word Uncle Tom at 18 years old. Didn't know what it meant or anything. But I remember on my birthday, November 7th, my freshman year there, my roommate gave me the autobiography of Malcolm X as a birthday present. And just like I just told you how Lauren could not put down Blades of Freedom, I could not put down the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I literally read it. My birthday was that Friday. He gave it to me Friday afternoon. And by Sunday evening, right before 60 Minutes came on, because we always watch 60 Minutes together, I had finished reading the entire book. And I was a totally changed person. And that led to me changing my name and my religion to what it is now. But they stopped calling me Cadet Uncle Tom and started calling me Cadet X. because I had fire and I had, they said I had backbone now. I was able to stand up and, face adversity, right dead in its eye with power and with confidence. And that to me is why Black history is so important, is it gives people that look like me an opportunity to stand up with their back straight, shoulders down, and eye adversity wherever it may came from, dead on. And that's the first thing that comes to my mind when you ask that question, because it's such a profound story, and that's like my Genesis story.
I'm sitting here nodding my head and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I mentioned that I am the 2019 Arkansas Teacher of the Year. My platform during that year was using passion and poetry to close the opportunity gap. So I'm going to answer your question through verse, right? And still going to be a nod to my girl, Nikki Giovanni. She has a poem entitled Black History Month. And in it, she says everything that I wouldn't even be able to adequately articulate, because she does it so beautifully. She says, if Black History Month is not viable, then wind does not carry the seeds and drop them on fertile ground. Rain does not dampen the land and encourage seeds to root. Sun does not warm the earth and kiss the seedlings and tell them plain, you are, I messed up. You're as good as anybody else. You've got a place here too. I think that to me is what Black History Month is all about. It is validating our existence and saying that we are integral, not just to the United States, but to the existence of this entire universe. Like we are, going back to Virginia Hamilton's piece, we are magical people who are just brilliant and wonderful, and everyone needs to know our stories, not just us. We are history.
Yes, and being integral, and I love the way that you put that, Stacey, is particularly in my story, I experienced historical exclusion growing up. And that Black history being embedded into me by Taurus James made me integral, made me love myself, made me feel important. So I'm glad the way that I'm glad that you put it that way, is Black history is history. But the reason that it is Black history is because our stories have been excluded from that overall story. So I'm glad you put it that way.
What's crazy, and this doesn't really address Osyrus's question, but again, I'm in high school, and that in 10th grade is where I really for real discovered Black poets. Like prior to my 10th grade communication class, I thought poetry was this brown cow howl, pie in the sky stuff that I couldn't relate to, right? And my communication teacher suggested that I read Equality and I Shall Be Free from Maya Angelou, and that is honestly what opened up the world. So Maya led me to Nikki and everybody else, but I can remember sitting in class after reading, I don't know which poem or whatever it was from Nikki, but I was like, wait a minute, Africa has real streets, because my perception of what Africa looks like, of what our history was, it was so warped that I just truly had no idea. So anyway, yeah, we get excluded, and our history gets shrinked. And I think when you were talking about the whitewashed version of of our historical figures, all of that.
Now this is important. This is important because I think all of us as Black people remember those moments when we got introduced the first time to a story, some history, any information regarding our stories, our history, Black history, you know what I'm saying? Because I remember it vividly for myself in elementary. Learning on different subjects, you talk about these prominent people in history. My first question in my mind used to always be, can you tell me somebody Black who did what they did? And I'm thankful that I had great teachers, you know what I'm saying, who could point out, like we were talking about Picasso, that we could talk about somebody like Jacob Lawrence too. I remember it vividly in elementary, discussing Faith Ringgold quilts and how her quilts were stories and art. And it was her quilts had a lineage and story to it that was just more than what we thought was just a quilt. It was actually telling us a story about family and heritage and, you know what I'm saying, the importance of the griot and keeping the story and remembering this stuff. And so it's important when you get these moments, particularly when you get them in school, because you remember those teachers, you remember where you were, you know what I'm saying? And it kind of leads me to the next question that I got, because, oh man, we in the middle of this legislative session. We just in the middle of life, you know what I'm saying? We're in the middle of life. And we seeing so many attacks on Black history, you know what I'm saying?
Look, Osyrus, it's cloudy around here. It's cloudy.
Oh man, chilly, it's cloudy, you know what I'm saying? The overcast, but man, the attacks on Black history, first off, the governor, before she even, barely got out of inauguration, she banned critical race theory in an executive order. And, we could talk about critical race theory and who's getting educated on it and who's not getting educated on it. But she banned critical race theory. That was one of her first executive orders. Recently, Conway had an incident at one of their basketball games where white coaches decided to celebrate Black history T-shirts. And somebody was offended and said they resembled a cult. So they banned those shirts. And then they tried to go back around and fix it up, but they banned those shirts. There have been numerous incidents, with attacks on Black history. The AP course that was in this pilot program this year by the College Board, the African American AP course, which is only at Little Rock Central High School and in Jonesboro at their high school, they're talking about taking that away from the schools in Arkansas because it could be considered indoctrination. It could be considered critical race theory. And this is the first, like I said, a pilot year. There are only 2 schools that got African American history AP. There are schools that have African American history or African studies, but this is the only AP course. And they're already talking, we ain't even made it through the whole school year, and they're talking about getting rid of it because it can be considered indoctrination. What are your thoughts on why currently Black history seems to be under attack in the state of Arkansas and nationally?
Okay, so I normally try to be very deliberate with my words and all of that, but I'm just gonna go ahead and just put it out there. This is my opinion. I'm not representing anybody that I work with or for. This is Stacey, right? And I think it still goes back to the 2 pieces that I have been talking about already, right? The people who could fly and us being essential to society. And I think that the reason all of this us, why we are under attack is because of fear and because of embarrassment and actually because of jealousy. So fear, I think that people are fearful if the mainstream society truly understood all that systems, including our governmental systems, have done to oppress people, they're afraid of what will happen when people really know that. I think the embarrassment part comes from just quite honestly being conquerors, being embarrassed of the tactics and the things that they have done to oppress people. And then the jealousy part, I keep talking about how magical we are, right? So I think it's difficult for people to understand how a group of people who have been oppressed, marginalized, had all of this hateful stuff put up on them can still be a loving people, a resourceful, a resilient, a loving people. And they're afraid that we're going to revolt. We're not going to continue to be forgiving and loving. And so the only way to ensure that power remains as it is, you have to keep people ignorant of the truth. You cannot empower them because that threatens the status quo and those that are in power.
Yeah, systems and power, that's definitely hitting at the core. When we look at critical race theory and how it got to the state that it is now as far as the anti-CRT movement, we can go back to summer of 2020 when we were all in shutdown mode and everybody was at home. There was a influential conservative activist by the name of, I think his name is Christopher Rufo. And Christopher Rufo, while he was sitting at home during the shutdown, he actually developed the plan, the game plan for this anti-CRT movement, this anti-Black history movement. And he did it with the sole goal of coming up with a way to give the conservative movement here in America the power to basically galvanize their followers so that they can, as Stacey said, so that they can not only take power effectively, but seize it in a way where they retain the power. And when he created this plan, the first thing that he did was he went on to Tucker Carlson's show to talk about his plan. And that night, President Trump was watching the show, and President Trump called him and said, okay, we need to implement that plan. And the next day, Trump issued an executive order banning CRT and telling all of his followers, his MAGA people, that that's what we will be doing, is we will be going after CRT, we will be going after Black Lives Matter, we will be going after Black history. So I say that just to say that this is a concerted plan that is a nationwide plan. It actually went globally. If you see what happened in Brazil and a couple of other nation states around the world who are following this paradigm shift. Colorism are the idea of us having the colors of Black and white. That's something that is an artificial construct that was created by the court system in Virginia back in the 1800s. And it was created as a result of Bacon's Rebellion. And Bacon's Rebellion did something that scared the hell out of those people that had the power and they had the systems, because at that time, there were white people who were enslaved, known as indentured servants, and there were Black people that were enslaved. And these Black and white people who were considered of lower class, they joined together and they almost overthrew the American system at that time. And it frightened the people in power so much that they created this system of race and caste, where before then there were Irish Americans and German Americans and British Americans and French Americans, and they all had their distinct identities. And they created the system of whiteness so that they can all join together under one umbrella to basically unite and ensure that the Africans who were enslaved could not, really come together and unite with the poor whites to overthrow the power system. So when we talk about CRT is a study of this power and these systems that Stacey talked about. It's a study of how law influences structural violence. That's what it is, a study of how law influences structural violence, how public policy influences structural violence. So this movement, anti-CRT movement, is to, they call it anti-woke. It's basically to put the people asleep, because the people are in power, like Stacey said, are afraid. They are afraid that if the truth gets out, they will be overthrown. And this is their process of securing their power and their position and their wealth.
So I'm gonna read this statement real quick, because we got on the topic of critical race theory. That's one of those, like you mentioned it, over the last few years, that word has been like hot in the media, hot in the press, has been in all these different conversations when we talk about the legislative sessions around the country. And Arkansas Learns, they put out this myth and fact sheet a couple days ago. And when it comes to the myth, it says, myth, critical race theory isn't being taught anywhere in Arkansas. That's the myth. This is what they put, not me. The fact, this is what the fact they said. President Biden's Department of Education is using nationwide guidelines and grant programs to force school districts to adopt key tenets of critical race theory. That includes from the Abolitionist Teaching Network and parts of newly proposed American history and civics education priorities. The governor's executive order directed the secretary to comb through those Department of Education materials to ensure Washington bureaucrats can't bully Arkansas schools into teaching racist indoctrination. As Governor Sanders and Secretary Oliva have said, Arkansas will teach students how to think and not what to think. Now, I gotta say this, and I want your opinions on that, because I have been looking at the state guidelines for social studies in Arkansas for months and months and months and months. And when there aren't any guidelines to African-American history, period, nothing. There are no guidelines. There's a bunch of suggestions. Most of it is what Kwami mentioned earlier. Sanitized, whitewash education on Martin Luther King. That's like 85% of what they recommend. A little bit about the Little Rock Nine, a little bit. For some reason, they got a couple of lessons on Bass Reeves. Hey, I don't know what that's about, but you take it for what it is. He was a sheriff, black sheriff in Fort Smith, I believe in the 17 or 1800s, one of the two.
Marshall.
You said a marshal? Okay.
Yeah, U.S. Marshal.
U.S. Marshal, my bad. That's why we got the historian here, so he, when I fumble. But I saw nothing about critical race theory in those suggested guidelines. I saw nothing about anything really beyond the civil rights movement up until now. And they start American history teaching in 8th grade now with the guidelines at 1929. So you can already imagine what you pretty much getting from social studies and history before middle school for the most part. So I just want to know what schools are teaching critical race theory that she's talking about, or just what is your feedback from this executive order that's banning it? What is your feedback on what they're saying about this?
What schools are teaching critical race theory? The only person that I know in the state of Arkansas that has even taught critical race theory is Professor Anastasia Bowles over at Bowen Law School. And the class that she taught, if I'm correct, she hasn't taught it in the last couple of years because of all of this craziness that's going on. But that's the only class that I am aware of on critical race theory here in the state of Arkansas, because it's not a K through 12 course. It's a graduate level legal course that deals with the law and how the law affects disparities in our society, how the law affects everything from housing to food to criminal justice, and it's a course to make you think about that. That's why the word theory is on the end. It just lets you think about, hey, if you're going to be a good attorney, you need to understand how the law affects disparate communities. So I'm not familiar about any school that teaches that. And then when you look at the standards, there are 2 laws in the Arkansas statute that govern Black history. And those 2 laws, I think they're about 15, 16 years old. I may be wrong, but somewhere around there. But those 2 laws specifically state that the Arkansas Black History Commission is supposed to develop the curriculum and the guidelines for the Department of Education, and then the Department of Education is supposed to implement such. Well, the Black History Commission developed those. The Department of Education never implemented.
So I've been making all kinds of faces and trying to restrain myself.
Remember, you're talking for yourself, right?
I know, and I'm doing so. Let me come back to that thought. So let me speak for myself and say that I'm a 21-year classroom practitioner. I have been teaching in public schools and at the college level for the last 21 years. And I promise you, the first time I ever became exposed to critical race theory, the actual content, was when I was working on my doctorate a couple years ago. So you're talking about me being in the classroom for 19 years and never have been taught about critical race theory, never have even heard those words until I started my advanced graduate degree. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when they say critical race theory, they're really not even talking about critical race theory. They're talking about all of this other stuff that they're lumping in there, which is where I am holding my breath, because part of me doesn't even want to let them know how wrong and off base they are, because then that will give them ammunition to go back and do some more messed up, jacked up policies that will negatively impact my children even more. But what they're talking about is not critical race theory. So that's all I gotta say. And that's all I'm gonna say, because I'm gonna start talking. the Southwest Little Rock Stacey McAdoo was gonna come out, and she don't need to come out right now.
Stacey, it sounds like you said that it's a dog chasing its tail, huh?
It is, and it's still it's still fear, and I mean, so fear and control. That's still what all of this is about.
Alrighty, well, I'm from the S-Dub, so anytime you want to
Mount up.
Go there. But so thank y'all for, you know what I'm saying, breaking it down so forever be broken. You know, this is nothing that concerns K through 12 education. 20 plus year educator says she's never even heard of this.
Mm-hmm.
She was working on her doctorate. And critical race theory, by the way, was first introduced back in the 70s. So it's just amazing to me that this conversation magically popped up in the 2020s, 50-some years later almost. So, you know, that's good information that y'all giving to the people. I'm a you know, navigate to this because we talked about the guidelines that have not been implemented for Black history education in Arkansas. And we're working to try to ensure that we have a Black history curriculum, some guidelines to put in place so that we do get a proper Black history education in our public schools eventually. And so my question to both of y'all is just how do y'all suggest we build a foundation for Black history knowledge and observe it year round in school and outside of school?
First thing that comes to my mind, particularly with what's going on right now with this anti-CRT BS, is the need for us to go back to what Fannie Lou Hamer and Stokely Carmichael taught us as far as freedom schooling. That's how we combat this stuff is like Stacey said, let the dog chase his tail and then let's go do what we need to do. So I'm a strong advocate of with my abolitionist mind that we need to actively recreate freedom schools where we can teach ourselves and teach our children what we value and what we believe that they need to learn to be successful. And I don't know exactly how to do that right now. That's something that I would defer to the Forever Teacher of the Year to help us formulate that. But that's the first thing that comes to my mind as I think about what we can do to do the 365 Black history. And I'm not talking about the McDonald's 365 Black history. I'm talking about our 365 24/7 Black history.
When I think about it, earlier in our conversation, I think it was actually you, Osyrus, who said when you were in history, and I may be getting this mixed up. I've been in so many conversations today, it's ridiculous. But in some conversation I was in, it was mentioned that when they were in history classes, they always wondered where were the Black people, right? And so I think at a very simple level, if whatever we're teaching, we keep that question in mind, and where were, and you can insert whatever group of people you want to insert, where were they and what were they doing during this period of time? I think that would be a start to help us. So my husband has this, he's actually designed a course and everything, and the terminology that he uses is teaching from I'm gonna mess it up, so I hope he's not watching. But he said something along the lines that we need to teach from a Black perspective. So, and it's that same premise of what I just said, but whatever is being taught, you find supplemental material to let people know what was going on at this time and how that impacted these people. So I think that's the easiest, most efficient, quickest way to actually have us teaching history, Black history, 24/7, 365 days a year.
You know, one thing that I think about, Stacey, when you say that is, you know, in the last legislative session and in this current legislative session, you know, Arkansas now has a law requiring the teaching of Holocaust education.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that that law was drafted is very specific on what they want to be taught for Holocaust education. They do not want you to teach the entire Holocaust education.
Right.
They only want you to teach about the Holocaust education as it affects 6 million European Jews. They don't want to talk about how the Holocaust actually started on the continent of Africa, where Hitler was doing experiments with millions of Africans before he even took it to Europe, and how there were Black populations throughout Africa that were also sent to the death camps. So when I think about that, Stacey, I think about, yeah, let's go ahead and teach this Holocaust education, but let's throw in, like you said, that supplemental information and that supplemental material. And let's talk about how Hitler sent his officers to the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville to learn about racism in America so that they can implement it in Europe.
Yes. I know, Osyrus, you didn't give us enough time.
It's all good. You know what I'm saying? In this conversation, I just keep on thinking about, because y'all keep on just giving great bits of information. And I think about the conversation I had with a friend of mine, Tiffany Fontenot, who's like a head librarian, Black head librarian at the Vanderbilt University. And one of the conversations that we had was the importance of literature as a child. And one thing we just don't see enough of, Black librarians. You know, as a child, the library was a safe place for me to go after school, you know, to get a snack, sit down and work on my homework, browse the periodicals, card catalog days too, going through the card catalog, looking for what I want. And I remember, so the first time I met a Black librarian, that became my home library.
Yep.
Right over there in Southwest.
It was Mrs. Bonner.
Right behind where the Arkansas State Police was in.
Yeah, that was Mrs. Bonner. Yes, sir.
So it was. Hey, and she made sure she looked out after all the Black children that came there. She made sure when it was 10 minutes to closing time, everybody come over there and get on their phone. So everybody get their parents come up there. If you was, had your bike hooked up in the front, you making sure you go and hook your bike. It's time to go, it's getting dark. But just the presence of a Black librarian and making those suggestions on finding some books. And then another thing, I'm grateful for her, but we don't see black male librarians. So there's a need for that too as well, because that thirst for knowledge that we have as children, they can identify that and help us in our journeys to learn more by guiding us to the right literature and books in those libraries. So it's important that we, tell our kids to, to read and enjoy what you're reading too. Find what you like. It's so many different genres of books out there.
I'm smiling because I was actually gonna give a shout out to Mrs. Bonner.
Yeah.
For real, she was the first Black librarian I ever met. And to this day, she is still in my corner rooting for me. Before she was my Patrick before Patrick Oliver was around, right? Mm-hmm. And I met, yes, she was the first person to listen to me do poetry, to encourage me to do poetry, and she still shows up to hear me speak. So Shout out to you, Mrs. Bonner, if you're watching.
We're gonna make sure Mr. Bonner find this video.
Yes, yes,
The
yes,
show.
yes.
You know, we're gonna close things up. We got to be prepared during this legislative session for those attacks that's gonna come against Black history. We've already seen the beginnings of this, and that's why it's important that we have this conversation and keep on having this conversation, because when it's time for us to go testify at the legislative session, when they start trying to take this Black history education out of our schools, we need to be prepared as citizens here to go up there and speak and talk about the importance of why we need to implement more Black history education in our public schools. Before we leave, you know what I'm saying, Kwami, I want you to drop your books in the chat too, because people on Facebook Live are asking for those books too as well.
Okay.
Just to put the book title and the author in the chat so we can pass it on to them. But before we leave, I want to hear just if you have another recommendation on a movie, a television show, a podcast, or maybe even another book that we could recommend to people to encourage more reading and more reading about Black history in particular.
I wish I could. But right now, it's so many. So I will just say that you can share my contact information if anybody wants to reach out to me, and we can have a conversation, because I have different categories that I can recommend based on where the people are and who they're trying to get these resources for.
No doubt. What about you?
One first thing that I would do is I would encourage everyone to support what's going on over at Philander Smith College right now. Philander Smith College has teamed up with Arkansas PBS, and both Stacey and I, we have relationships with Arkansas PBS as far as getting information out to the people. But Arkansas PBS is working with Philander Smith College on a Black history film series called Philander. I think it's called like Philander Forward Film Series, and it's going on through February and March, where they are showing documentaries on Black history. So I would definitely check that out to participate and to support this effort so that it can continue. One movie that right now that comes to my mind that I haven't seen, but I'm interested in seeing. I've seen the trailer, but it's a Black history film that was actually filmed in Fayetteville called Freedom's Path. And it's a film about a Union soldier who deserts. He's a deserter, and he comes into contact with a community of Africans who freed themselves, if you know what I mean. And they are part of the Underground Railroad. So it talks about how he learns from them about Blackness in America during the Civil Rights era. I'm really interested in checking that out. It was actually a screening here in Little Rock 2 weeks ago, but it was a night that I was in class, so I wasn't able to make it. But I can't wait till it comes out on like Netflix or whatever so that I can see it. And since we're talking about CRT and what CRT really is, a book that I can suggest when we talk about how structural violence affects disparately BIPOC communities. Here's a book that I recently got. I haven't had a chance to open it, but I did get a chance to attend a lecture by the author. The author is Dr. Andre M. Perry, and it's Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities. So that's what I would suggest, and I guess I should put it in the chat right now too.
Yeah, please add that to the chat.
I do have one plug that I would also like to mention.
Go
It is
ahead.
It's a fabulous book called Activating Black Boys and Girls, How to Raise and Teach African-American Children, written by McAdoo and co-authored and edited by yours truly. So it has excellent information and resources on everything that a parent or teacher should know or needs to know about how to effectively teach and raise our children.
And Stacey, you guys will be doing a workshop in Pine Bluff coming up, right? Why don't you let everybody know about that too?
So we're actually doing a book signing and discussion about it tomorrow at Black Magic in Pine Bluff.
No doubt. Y'all go out there, support Stacey McAdoo and LaRon McAdoo with the book and the book signing over at the Magic Store. Shout out to Brother OB and Kwasi, owners of that store in Pine Bluff. Shout out to Kwami mentioning Freedom Pack, because you talked about Deion Burns earlier, and he got a role in that movie. So, and I also want to give a shout out to Wesley Peters and Adasia Cooper. They came out recently with a great coloring book for the kids.
Yes, I just ordered 2 copies this morning.
I just ordered 3. You know, I had to go get some for the fam. But it's Arkansas Black History coloring book. I dropped the link in the chat. It's volume 1, so I know when they say volume 1, I know there's going to be several more coming out later. But Adasia Cooper, very talented artist here, and Wesley Peters, a very talented author, a young author and writer and entrepreneur. Man, they're doing great things. So we dropped the link for that. Tell your kids, you know what I'm saying, they can enjoy the coloring and learn some, because great historical content in those books right there. And I hope everybody got all the links that we put out there too. So we appreciate this conversation. This first of the year, but it's not our last Why Black History Matters conversation. We plan on continuing these conversations even more. And go holler at Kwami Abdul-Bey too with The Tables Have Turned, his book. We got some authors, historians, educators, artists, poets, all on this call. We appreciate y'all joining us for this Friday webinar. Hey, we're going to share this link with everybody so we can make sure we get all this good information out. Till next time, this is powered by the Arkansas Public Policy Panel. Peace, and y'all enjoy y'all weekend.